quasi-judicial body that is governed by North Carolina general statutes, the City of Asheville's Unified Development Ordinance, and Buncombe County Ordinance. We are authorized to hear requests for certificates of appropriateness for alterations, demolitions, new construction, and other work within historic districts, or for the alteration and demolition of historic landmarks, and other duties, including preliminary review of subdivisions as specified in the ordinances for the HRC. I will now ask commission members and staff to introduce themselves.
Celesta Gorman, designer.
Amy Moxley, architect.
Sue Oliva, American historian.
Will Hornaday, Albemarle Park Local Historic District.
Sarah Gross, anthropologist and archaeologist.
Xander Ellenbogen, architect.
Shannon Watkins, local realtor.
Alex Cole, HRC liaison.
John Maddox from the City Attorney's Office.
Madeline Stone, planning technician.
Thank you. We will consider the minutes from the March meeting of the HRC. The minutes include findings of fact and conclusions of law. Are there any corrections?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from March 2024 and the findings of facts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now begin the evidentiary hearings for the items listed on the agenda. As a quasi-judicial proceeding, the HRC is not setting policy, nor are we soliciting public opinion on the desirability of an application. The HRC hears and considers evidence presented and applies the standards set forth in the guidelines and standards of the specific historic district for that application. The HRC must make its decision upon competent, material, and substantial evidence to determine the facts of the hearing. The HRC will use judgment and discretion to apply the standards contained in the relevant guidelines to the facts. The commissioners, in voting for an item, will not have a fixed opinion, not susceptible to change, have a conflict of interest, have engaged in ex parte communication regarding the application. This meeting is open to the public, but participation is limited to interested parties who wish to provide comment or testimony regarding the proposal. So, now we will move to our first public hearing item. Anyone who wishes to speak today, will you please come forward and raise your right hand?
If you're here for the Montford amendments, you don't need to be sworn in. It's just for the quasi-judicial items. Shane and Darcy, if you
Want to raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing for a certificate of appropriateness or preliminary subdivision approval before the Historic Resources Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Alex?
All right, thank you, Chair Oliva and members of the commission. Just gonna friendly reminder for everyone to try to speak, loud enough into your microphone today. I know the last couple of months we've had trouble with our live stream. It's really hard to hear, and we are working on that. So hopefully that will be improved here in the near future. The first item today is 112 Pearson Drive. Just to get you oriented, this parcel map on the top left and photo of the front elevation. This house is a non-contributing structure to the historic district. The application includes some after-the-fact work, including replacing some existing sliding glass doors both on the side and rear elevation, as well as as removal of this window opening on the rear elevation and constructing the new sliding glass door opening that's in the photo on the bottom right here. And these doors, just as an FYI, if you looked at the packet, there are aluminum clad sliding glass doors. And then this is the front door, the existing door on the left-hand side, and they are proposing to replace it with the wooden door, salvage door on the right-hand side. And they are also, just as a note, proposing to replace the existing asphalt shingle roof. That's something that we review at staff level all the time. So no issue with that. And then they do also want to install some new light fixtures, which is the picture on the left, and I just included a picture of the front door just for context. It seems like a small thing to nitpick, but the standards do speak to size of light fixtures. These light fixtures are over 2 feet tall, and I do feel like for this particular entryway, if you put one on each side, it's going to be pretty big. And just for context too, on the right-hand side, that is a 10-inch tall light fixture, just so you can compare. I'll leave that to you whether or not you want to take an opinion on the size of the light fixtures, but just noting that. There's not a standard in the non-contributing structure section that speaks to materials for replacement doors and windows on non-contributing structures. In the past, the commission has required wood for replacement on non-contributing structures. However, I don't think it's not written in the standards, and I don't think necessarily that aluminum clad is an inappropriate material for a ranch style house specifically. So I didn't note any concerns on that. I did note in my, in my staff report, I did also note concern that they want to paint the brick, and that has not been allowed, even for non-contributing structures in the district. The standards for painting specifically say that painting of historic masonry, including brick, is not allowed. And this came up, some of you might remember that multifamily project at the rehab of the mid-century brick church that's on the corner of West Chestnut and Cumberland. That project's currently underway. They were proposing to paint that building, and the commission was not in support of it. It's just to give a point of reference for a similar vintage building. I would also like the applicant to, this picture doesn't capture it very well, but you can see under the new doorway, there's what's noted on the floor plans as a temporary landing, I think it's noted on the plans as, and so I just want to understand what that's going to be in the long term, in terms of, are they going to pour a new concrete stair there, or what's happening as the long-term solution for entering and exiting that new doorway. And then we just asked for the manufacturer specs for the asphalt shingle roofing as well. There's a picture of what's proposed in there, but we don't actually have the specifications from the manufacturer. So that's the only outstanding thing that we would need, and that's something that we would happily review as a condition via staff review. So this summarizes my comments in my staff report and the proposed work, but happy to answer questions if you all have any.
Any questions for Alex?
Okay.
I don't think so.
All right, thank you. Darcy, if you want to come up and I'll just show you where everything is on the laptop here. So I've got my presentation stuff up, which you can use that if you want to, or we've got all your documents here. They've just been relabeled as exhibits. So,
Okay.
I'll let you navigate away, but I'm happy to help if you need me.
Thank you. Hi,
Hi.
I'm Darcy Ballard. This is my husband, Brad. I'll start with the simple stuff. The lighting, I agree, is too tall. We brought them with us when we moved, and I adore them, but they're not in proportion to this roof line. They're like 19 and a half inches, and they look sort of ridiculous. So we're going to go ahead and nix that and find smaller versions. There will be a new stair to the back door slider where it steps down. It only requires one, so it'll blend with the concrete slab that's already there.
Is that made of concrete?
It is concrete, yes.
So it's a concrete,
Right now, it's just wood, so we can get in and out, but yes, it will be.
and the dimensions is the same as the wood platform?
The size of the door.
Oh, the size of the
When
width
you
of the
walk out the
door?
door, there's a raised platform here, that's gonna stay there. And then there'll be a step just below the sliders, the length of the sliders.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. As far as, I guess, the big part is the brick, painting of the brick. I don't even know where to begin with that, but the house is vintage, I guess, not historical. So, and it's labeled, I guess, a contemporary single-story brick building, and as you can see in the pictures, the brick is not historical looking, it's actually quite unattractive. And I guess you guys had to do site visits so you could see in the neighborhood that this house doesn't fit in comfortably. All my neighbors are painted bungalows or 2 stories, and we stand out like a sore thumb. So we were hoping to paint it, you know, kind of a cream color and make it look more charming, which would blend with the bungalows that are around us. That's kind of all I have on that. Do you have questions?
Have questions for the applicant? I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, do you have a question?
I'm just thinking that the standards that we're to follow mention not painting brick, and it's multifold reason for somebody described it to me as like a loaf of bread, and that the outside crust is what holds the brick together, and then once that gets, it weakens the brick eventually to paint, and that's the reason. It's not an aesthetic thing for not painting brick.
This house, when we bought it, was in complete disrepair. So the only good thing about it is the brick is solid. Outside of that, nothing else was.
Yeah.
So as far as that, I think we would be
That's sort of just the
improving.
reasoning behind the.
And I understand that. And there's a lot, I mean, I actually took pictures of all kinds of houses through the historic district that have painted brick, and I know it says historically, or not previously painted. There's so many painted foundations and chimneys and porch balusters out there that seems hard to believe that none of those were all previously painted before the guidelines came into effect. So it's very natural to have painted brick in the district. It seems very seamless.
That's the only question I wanted to bring up.
Oh, and the doors, I know it says aluminum clad, they are wood on the inside. So I don't know if the aluminum clad is covering the wood, because it is a wood frame on the inside, very substantial compared to what was there.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to close the floor for public comment. Any further discussion from the commission? Oh, yeah. Is there any other public comment? Thank you. Okay, no other public comment. Any other comments from the commissioners? Quiet. Are we ready for a motion?
Well, I think I've got, so since the lights are going to be, is that a desk approval when that gets sorted out on your end? So we just kind of cross that off?
Yeah, we can just say, take out the descriptor for the fixtures out of the motion.
Okay. And I don't think the motion template's shared.
Yeah.
Are there any, were there other opinions about that painted brick?
Can you talk into the mic?
I have the motion one on mine, so it should be in there.
You have the motion template? So
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you all have the standards open in front of you, but number 3 on page 71, painting of brick, stone, copper, bronze, concrete, or cement block surfaces that were historically unpainted is not allowed.
And that applies to non-contributing as well.
So,
I gotta get to this thing, just 4, 10.
so you take that out. Take a vote on the paint.
I guess just hear other commissioners'
How
thoughts
do you
on
guys
it.
feel about the paint? Painting the brick?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate, but it is pretty clear in the standards that it's not allowed. Everything else in the requests, I think, I'm okay with everything else, but unfortunately, yeah, the painting, it does say absolutely not.
I agree. I generally like painted brick, the idea of it, but we have to follow the standards.
I agree too. It's our responsibility to follow the standards, although I appreciate what you want to do, but
And the sliders on the back of the house?
I did leave out one thing,
Mm.
that the doorway that's immediately to the right of
That previously was the entryway right there on the back. That will go away and be filled with brick, just as an FYI. I'm not noting any concern about it, but just something I skipped over.
Well, I'm ready to make a motion with the exception of the painted brick,
okay,
but I'm not seeing the motion template.
here.
Chair, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, application and project description, 4 pages, Exhibit B, floor plans, 2 pages, Exhibit C, new doors, lighting, and roof specifications, 5 pages, Exhibit D, photographs, 11 pages, Exhibit E, image of 10-inch light fixture taken by staff, April 8th, 2024, and the commissioner's inspection and review of the subject property. I move that this commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. 1, the application for this after-the-fact approval to replace sliding glass doors on south and rear elevation with new aluminum-clad sliding glass doors. Remove 1 existing window on rear elevation and convert opening to a new door opening with aluminum-clad sliding glass doors. Construct new concrete step adjacent to the new door opening. Remove existing single light door on the rear elevation and enclose opening with red brick siding matching existing. Replace existing front door with salvaged triple light wood door. Replace existing asphalt shingles roof with new asphalt shingle roof in gray color. Install 2 new light fixtures adjacent to the front entry. All work will be completed in accordance with approved and attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals as required by law must be obtained before work may commence. That the standards for non-contributing structures found on pages 68, 69 Roofs on pages 74, 75, painting and paint colors on pages 70, 71, and lighting on pages 42, 43 in the Montfort Historic District Standards adopted April 14th, 2010, and amended December 14th, 2016, were used to evaluate this request. This application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. The architectural integrity of the structure is being preserved. Alterations to the structure are compatible with the size, scale, color, material, and scale of the neighborhood, the building, and its environment. New roof material matches existing and will be medium to dark in color. D, new exterior lighting is understated and compatible with the new historic character of the structure. That the actions improvements proposed in the application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montfort Historic District.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Based upon the foregoing findings and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued with the following conditions. Revised light fixtures and manufacturer specifications for roofing be submitted to staff for review and approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, next item, 450 Montfort Avenue. This is also a pretty straightforward application. This is at the very northeastern end of the historic district boundary. The photo on the right is the existing primary structure on the parcel, which looks like it's been altered quite a bit. The proposed work in this application is for the existing carriage house that's on the rear of the property. So just some photos to help us through the discussion. The application includes a few things to replace the existing garage door, which is, as you can see, not original to the structure. They also need to add, this is being converted into a residential unit, so they also need to add an egress window, which is proposed on the south elevation, which if you're looking at the photo is the bottom left. So there will be a new egress window to the right of the existing window. And then they are also proposing to replace the existing entry door, which I think there's a better picture in the plan in your packet than what I included in my my slide deck here, but it's not an original door, so they're proposing to replace that with a wood multi-light door. And what else? The existing stair is not in great shape. You can kind of see it in the picture on the bottom left, but they're just proposing to replace the existing stairway. And then the other piece is just to add a new mechanical unit on the west, adjacent to the west elevation, so same elevation where the stairway is, that will be screened with square lattice. So I didn't note any concerns with this application. I just noted in my staff report that we still need the manufacturer's specifications for all the doors, the window, and the mechanical unit. So, and I've relayed all that to the applicant. So, any questions?
Any questions for Alex?
All right, thank you. Did you want to pull up anything else that I didn't?
Maybe just the drawings. I think they probably speak to more.
They're all here. They've just been renamed.
Site plan, there we go. All right. Like Alex mentioned, it should be pretty straightforward. It's, the existing carriage house is in pretty rough shape, and,
Can you introduce?
oh, I'm sorry, my name is Shane Elliott, I'm with Super Unison. The carriage house is in pretty rough shape. I know the interior is not in the purview of the board, but we're doing a full interior upfit. It was a residential unit most recently, so there's not technically a change of use or change of occupancy. So it's becoming, we're just refitting it, doing some structural work, getting it back to a usable state, which is why we're changing the stair. It's defunct effectively. So we propose to put it back pretty much exactly the way we found it. Other elements on the outside, like she mentioned, garage door, not in great shape. Want to replace it with one that basically looks just like it, but is more thermally sound. We're proposing a wood core, a wood-clad door, so it'll be wood. The mechanical unit will be just a small condenser unit on the the west elevation, sort of tucked behind the stair. The grade comes down there, and it's really not very visible, even without the screening, but we'll be putting the square lattice screening around it. The more sort of, let me make sure I'm in the right place here. I guess the most significant impact that, let's see, let me scroll down. The most significant impact we are proposing is the new window. And we went through early assistance with the Development Services Department, there we go, to determine whether or not the existing window that was there was big enough, would comply as it is, and it doesn't. So we're required by the code to add a new window. So then there's one bedroom in the unit. So there are really only two walls that we can put the window. One is the east side, which is basically the parking lot side. You can see it. The other is the south side, where you ultimately can't see it, which is where we propose to put it. So if you sort of make a decision tree, you can this one versus that one, this one seems least impactful. So we put it to the south, so then there's an existing window on that elevation. And the way the room lays out, there's only one side of that elevation, of the existing window, you could put the new window on, which is why it's placed there. And it looks goofy, and I don't love it, but it's got to be that big. So unless we pull out the adjacent existing window and make it as large, which I know is not allowed, we kind of don't have any options other than to have a goofy-looking window. I mean, it looks okay. It's just not optimum. I'd like these windows to match, but they don't. So at any rate, that's really the bulk of it. And like Alex mentioned, we'll need to come up with the manufacturer specs. We got some general design intent guidelines from the web for what kind of door we'd like to put in. I found actual models, but as a GC comes on board and they begin pricing things, we're going to let them pull that information together, because I'm not going to spec a mechanical unit. That's not what we do. So we'll get that info from them, pull that packet together, submit it to staff, and make sure we can get that all checked off before we expect to be done.
Great.
So.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? Close the floor for public comment. Any other comment from commissioners? No? Ready for?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I gotta use your selection template again. Chair, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, application and project description, 3 pages, Exhibit B, owner's affidavit, Exhibit C, site plan and elevation drawings, 3 pages, Exhibit D, floor plans and photographs, 2 pages, Exhibit E, mechanical unit screening details, 7 pages, added by staff March 29th, 2024, Exhibit F, door specifications, 2 pages, added by staff April 2nd, 2024. Exhibit G, additional photographs, 11 pages, added by staff March 29th, 2024.
and the Commissioner's actual inspection and review of the subject property, I move that this commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based upon the following. 1, that the application is for modifications to existing accessory structure, including replacement of existing non-original pedestrian door on second floor with new multi-light and wood paneled door, constructing a new window opening and installing a new 1/1 wood double-hung window on the south elevation, reconstruction of wood stair on west elevation, replacement of existing garage door with new paneled wood core with wood overlay garage door, and installation of new mechanical unit with painted square wood lattice screening on the west elevation. All work will be completed in accordance with the approved and attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals as required by law must be obtained before work may commence. 2, that the standards for carriage houses, garages, and accessory structures found on pages 34, 35, windows and doors on pages 84, 85, and utilities and mechanical systems on pages 82, 83 of the Montfort Historic Design Review Standards adopted April 14, 2010, and amended December 14, 2016, were used to evaluate this request. 3, this application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. Original character of the carriage house, including windows, doors, and their openings, and other materials are being maintained. B, new window material is on the rear elevation, and new window unit will be wood. C, existing doors being replaced are not original to the structure. New doors will be wood. D, new mechanical unit will be inconspicuously located and screened with painted square lattice. Number 4, that the actions and improvements proposed in this application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montfort Historic District.
Second.
All in favor? Sorry.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Based upon the foregoing findings and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued without.
Sorry, no, I haven't had a chance to put the conditions in there, but we need the manufacturer specifications for the
With the
doors,
following
window, and mechanical.
Conditions, manufacturer specifications on doors and windows,
Mechanical
and the mechanical unit on the west elevation,
will be submitted for staff review and approval.
as stated by staff.
Second.
Shingles?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Oh. Yep, sorry, the roofing.
As well as number 3, the manufacturer and make of the asphalt shingles.
Do you need a vote again?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Who seconded on that one?
I did.
Okay, thank you. All right, I don't have a slide deck for the Woolworth item, but that, just as an FYI, I think I'd said in my email to you all that the Woolworth landmark designation was revised to include the first floor features that were discussed at the last meeting. So I don't know if we want to have any more discussion on that, or if you all want to make a motion to go ahead and pass it on to the State Historic Preservation Office. That will be the next step, and then they have 30 days to remit comments back to this board. And so we would, I think, need to schedule the public hearing on this item for the June HRC meeting, and then it will go to council at their second June meeting. So yeah, if you all feel like the report's okay and ready to go, then I'll send it off to the SHPO.
Okay.
Any questions for Alex? Are we ready to vote?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the landmark designation to forward on to the State Historic Preservation Office for the Woolworth Building at 25 Haywood Street.
Second.
All approve?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, thank you. And then I know we had on the agenda a short presentation from Ellie Gross, who's one of the planners with my department. She sent an email in lieu of this presentation because we have plenty of other stuff to discuss today, but also she had a conflict, as it turns out, and it was just going to be a 5-minute update anyway. So hopefully you all got that email, and then we'll send some follow-up to you all on that particular effort. I'll move on to the Montford Standards Amendment. I also did not, I do have a staff report for you in there as well as a memo. I didn't prepare a slideshow since we're just talking about sections of text, but we can obviously have the sections of the standards pulled up as we talk through them. So I'm going to start with just some general contextual information that hopefully made sense from the memo. But the reason why we drafted the memo is we just wanted to kind of bring together the information that staff has awareness of in terms of how we've gone about making amendments to the design standards in the past, just to help you understand how that process usually works. So the current standards were adopted in 2010. They replaced the original standards that were adopted in 1981, I believe. So this was, it's my understanding that this was like a wholesale rewrite. Obviously, the standards were pretty old in 2010, so needed to be updated. But it was partly the impetus was solar technology and needing to incorporate sustainability goals into the standards. So this document, after it was adopted in 2010, was also then amended, I believe in 2014 for, there were some accessory structures or an accessory structure, to my understanding, that got built that some residents felt like was too big for the district. And so there was a request to work with the neighborhood on amending the standards for accessory structures specifically. So that was in partnership with the HRC members and city staff. I was not here for that, but I believe that's how that process worked. And then we initiated in 2016 some amendments to the standards for fencing. The standards for fencing have always been subjective, and state statute dictates that staff can really only approve things that are very clearly meeting the design standards. We're not supposed to be making super subjective interpretive decisions of the standards. So we recommended at the time that we change the level of review. At that time, only wood picket fences in Montford in front yards required major work review. So we proposed changing to the level of review for all front yard fences to be major work, since it is subjective, and related back to the architectural style of the house, the location, et cetera, whether or not it's appropriate to the site for various reasons. And we also, it's part of that, the only other substantive thing was we updated the standards for wire fencing to be more specific. And as part of that effort, we did do some community engagement to gauge support from the neighborhood on that effort. And then the only other amendment to these standards that's happened since then was we had actually made the standards for change the level of review for retaining walls in the 2014 amendment push to make it more restrictive too. And at once we worked with it for a couple of years, it seemed unnecessarily restrictive for retaining walls. So then we just backed off of that and changed it so that only walls that are taller than 4 feet have to come before the commission for major work review. So that was not really a substantive change, since the level of review is mostly dictated by the statute anyways. It's my understanding that this is kind of unusual. I obviously have not been with the commission since its inception in 1979. To my knowledge, this is the first time we've gotten a resident-led proposal that didn't have, a working group of the HRC and staff to kind of bring us all along on the journey, if you will. So the memo lays out kind of how this played out from when we were made aware last summer of the potential amendments that this neighborhood group wanted to put forth out into the neighborhood, which is totally fine. But what we suggested from a process standpoint was to ask the commission to form a small subcommittee to work with the neighborhood and staff to craft amendments together, but that was not what they opted for. So we're here now with their proposed amendments and the survey results. They did post a survey back at end of summer, early fall last year. That the results of that are included with their submittal in addition to the proposed amendments. So I'm going to try to move through this fairly quickly since we've got folks here to offer comment, but I'm going to go in, let's see, the order, will this work? See if my page will load with the district standards, but hopefully you will have the section pulled up in front of you while I'm talking that they submitted with their red line version. So I'm going to start with fences and walls. So the proposal that's included today is to allow fences in any location and to change setback from 4 feet to 2 feet. And I am not recommending in favor of these amendments. This is certainly not to imply that the existing standards are perfect. I'm only making a recommendation on what's before the commission, been proposed to the commission. So fences were not intrinsic elements in the district historically. If you read through the National Register nomination, they do speak to vistas within the neighborhood and openness. Which it's more, when I think of like looking down Montford Avenue or Cumberland Avenue, for example, there are fences there, but if you imagine every house having a fence. And so that makes it kind of tricky, right? It's like what makes it appropriate to have a fence in one place or another. So that is a place I think where the standards are not super helpful. And then so the setback requirement for fencing, that's where there's a fence and a retaining wall together. And really the intent of that standard is to diminish the vertical elements within the landscape, being so tall. If you have a retaining wall with a fence immediately on top of it or right behind it, it can feel out of scale with the neighborhood. And then also setting it back a little farther allows for plantings to be included so that they can screen the vertical elements. And there's many properties in the district that can and do utilize rear and side yard fences. Those are things we approve as minor work all the time. And there's plenty of those throughout the neighborhood. There's some lots where that's not possible. I spoke with someone a couple of weeks ago about a front yard fence whose the rear of their house is it's a duplex. And so the rear of it is the unit's owned by someone else. And so they can't utilize the backyard. So there are circumstances where rear yard fences can't be accommodated, but in a lot of locations they can. We've contacted our transportation department. We understand there are safety concerns in the neighborhood, not related to speeding traffic, but also some related to speeding traffic. And we understand that the speed limit on Montford Avenue is specifically of concern, and that has been communicated to our transportation staff. And what was their most recent follow-up to me was that they couldn't lower the speed limit previously because of the first responder time from a public safety perspective, but they were, I think, going to reanalyze it based on the new station on Broadway in terms of time to get into the neighborhood from that station versus the presumably the station downtown is the other closest station, which I could see how that would take a little longer, obviously. So those are my notes on fences and walls. I don't know if you all want me to just go through and then you can just hear public comment and not then ask questions, or do you have questions for me?
Take them one at a time, I mean.
Yeah, in terms of my staff report, whatever y'all think is best.
What do you guys think? I think maybe one at a time. One at a time,
Okay.
right? Okay. So, any questions for Alex?
Yeah, I'm confused about this setback proposal and what is actually being proposed, because when reading the standards, it's only this, are we only talking about a setback from the top of retaining wall?
Mm-hmm.
That's it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The commission where they have approved front yard fencing has typically required there to be plantings in front of it, which just, by default dictates that it's going to be set back, but there's no measurement. There's no, distance requirement for the setback. So, yeah, that standard is really meant to speak to what if you had imagine if you had I don't think you were on the commission yet, Xander, but there's a pretty tall retaining wall on the backside of the Montford North Star Academy property, and they needed to put a fence there because of how tall the wall was. And obviously having a fence on top of a 10-foot tall wall was sort of problematic from a vertical element standpoint. So yeah, it's I think mainly for the purposes of that. It's I think more to probably a thing in a front yard where there would be a lower retaining wall and then a fence set back from it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I don't have any fence questions.
Okay.
Any other questions for Alex?
Okay. All right. Moving on to sustainability and energy retrofit. I should say that we asked to be able to help refine some of the questions in the survey before it went out last year, but our recommendations didn't make it in there. But one of the survey questions obviously was specifically about solar, and if you look at that information that was included in both the document that is their proposed amendments and the survey, they included some photos of houses that have front-facing gable roofs that have solar on the sides, and those are all projects that we've approved via minor work. So I feel like the standards are working well. We've approved, I think, over 20 solar applications in the past 5 years. We've had one that I can think of where they were proposing panels on a front-facing part of the roof that was withdrawn before they just decided not to apply for major work. But that being said, the purpose of the design standards is to maintain the historic character of the district, which is also the purpose of the historic district overlay, which is why historic preservation is a priority. And obviously locating solar collectors on front-facing portions of roof or in front yards or yards adjacent to public rights-of-way does stand to negatively impact the historic character of the district. And I realize that we are in deep with climate change, so certainly not intended to discourage solar. We are super supportive of that, but also need to balance that with historic preservation since it is the purpose of the overlay. And if you look at the North Carolina General Statute on solar, it also allows for local governments to regulate solar collectors. I think it says in areas visible by a person on the ground, on facades that face areas open to common or public access, on roof surfaces that slope downward towards the same types of areas, and in areas in front facades open to the same areas. And that's anywhere. That doesn't even necessarily have to be in our historic overlay. So what that tells me is that this is recognized as maybe not something that is the ideal, to have for any neighborhood or part of our city where we would want solar, collectors just proliferating in front of buildings, et cetera. So, and then also, if you look at the Secretary of the Interior Standards Illustrated Guidelines on Sustainability for Rehabilitating Historic Structures, as well as the U.S. Department of Energy guidance, which these are linked. Hopefully you had time to look at them, but these documents, the state statute and those documents are linked out of my staff report in case you want to read them or reference them. But they also give the same guidance on solar panel placement or solar collector placement as do our design standards. So they're consistent with both the state solar center as well as the federal standards for sustainability and rehabilitating historic buildings. So we feel like the section of the design guidelines pertaining to solar works well, and it should stay the same. Okay, any questions for me on that before I move on to the next topic?
Any questions for Alex on solar?
Okay. Windows and doors. This is on pages 84 and 85. I don't think I made it to if anybody wants me to pull up the section on the screen while we're talking, I'm happy to do that. Let's see. Oh, this thing does not like me today. All right, while this is thinking about loading. So again, obviously the purpose of the design standards is to maintain the historic character of the district. Historic windows are are widely known or considered to be one of the most character-defining features of historic buildings. I like to give the example of, I don't know the name of this building, but it's at the intersection of Woodfin and Broadway. The big building that's on the corner across the street from the Masonic Temple. That building has some beautiful original steel windows, but then there's also a bunch of vinyl windows that have been installed, and it really does change the character entirely of the building. And I know I don't need to tell you all how important this is, but just as an example, and a pretty egregious example of how detrimental it can be to historic buildings to replace original windows. Historic windows are also, there's plenty of documentation on the environmental benefits of preserving historic windows. And I know there's a window specialist here that's planning to give public comment, so if you have questions on energy efficiency, et cetera, as far as restoring wood windows versus getting rid of them and replacing them, I'm sure he can be the expert in the room on that, but there's also a link to Preservation North Carolina has several resources linked on their website, so if you want to read more specific information about the sustainability aspect of retaining and preserving historic windows, that is also there as a resource. And so allowing replacement of historic windows would also be in conflict with all guidance on best preservation practices, including the Secretary of the Interior standards, which form the premise of any local historic district standards and are incorporated into the Montford standards. I think it's on page 27. Just the basic, I think there's 12 basic tenets of preservation. So that's my 2 cents on windows.
Any questions for Alex?
Okay. Lastly is included is to consider proposing or consider allowing wraparound additions and additions on side elevations. I You see, there's not a lot of bullet points here. And the reason why that is because I'm only not recommending in favor of the proposed amendments as is. I think this is the one subject area that we could spend time considering. It would just mean that we would probably work with the executive committee, as we've discussed, to look at standards for additions in other North Carolina cities and counties to see how they're written, and look at the Secretary of the Interior standards so we can craft the language really carefully, because they may not be appropriate for all all buildings in the historic district. So we just want to make sure we draft the language thoughtfully and in a more specific kind of detailed way. And if the commission supported that and wanted to pursue that, then we could go to, if we draft amendments, we can go back to the neighborhood and ask, to gauge their interest and support on whatever we come up with. So that would be our process, I think. So, any questions?
Any questions for Alex?
Okay, all right. Sorry, go ahead.
So overall, your, where did it go, your summary? Is that the way to move forward on this is with a larger group working together on solving an update on the standards together?
So I'm not, as staff, recommending that we pursue a wholesale rewrite of the Montfort design standards at this juncture. I would just say that, if we're comparing, the Biltmore Village standards haven't been updated since they were adopted in 1980 or 81. And so, and in Montfort, to be sure, we spend most of our time reviewing projects in Montfort. It is one of the largest local historic districts in the state. I think that, I think this particular juncture is maybe not the most ideal time, unless the commission just really wants to pursue a wholesale rewrite. We would just need to find resources to do that. We don't have money to hire a consultant, which is typically what we would do. We would hire someone. I should point out to you that Commissioner McDonald sent me comments that hopefully you all had time to read, which talked about the public process that we would typically undertake, which takes a lot of resources to do. And so while we are supportive of Montfort and want to help them, we also have other things on our work plan too. So that's just something to be mindful of. We are also trying to, in addition to maintaining design review, et cetera, in our existing local historic districts, we are also trying to be more equitable with our programmatic goals. So we've also been trying to focus on other areas of the city where we haven't focused our energy from a preservation perspective, like our legacy neighborhoods. So just to give you all a sense, obviously, I know we kind of have updates here and there, but just a sense of where we feel like we are. And I'm not saying that the Montfort standards are anywhere close to perfect, but I feel like they do work pretty well, with the exception of some things that are repeat kind of difficult things like fences and front yards. And I don't know that that's ever not going to be a difficult subject area, unless the commission agrees that there should be fences everywhere. And if that's the case, then that checks that box. You know what I mean?
So going forward now, for the commission, the idea was that we were going to hear from pro and
So the way we've organized this is the same way as city council and other boards and commissions as far as public comment. This is not a quasi-judicial item, so we can limit public comment. So the applicant team will have 10 minutes to present to you, and et cetera, and then we'll go into the rest of the public comment, which will be 3 minutes for each speaker. And unless you are here as a person speaking on yourself and 3 other people that are present, in which case that group can have 10 minutes. And then we're limiting, obviously, total an hour.
okay, so we'll start with the applicants with 10 minutes.
Yes,
Okay.
yep. And then as far as the decision-making process that follows is really up to you all. If you felt like you wanted to take more time to consider, you don't have to decide today. It's really up to you in terms of how you want to proceed. And I think they are asking you to vote on each bucket individually, not all of them together. But I just let them know that that's really up to the commission to determine how they want to make a vote. So if you guys do make a vote today.
And who's our timer?
Madeline's got to,
Madeline's got to count?
I think so. She's also trying to take minutes at the same time, so.
So if somebody else wants to do this, then, so I don't mind doing it, and then
Yeah.
we also have to list you guys.
Did anybody come in that wants to hear public comment that hasn't had a chance to sign up? Okay.
I would just like to comment that, I mean, I don't think that these 4 things brought forward really, that we need to redo the whole standards off of the 4 subjects brought forward. Like, I don't think that that requires a whole rewrite of the whole standards. But, yeah, I mean, I think each can be reviewed individually.
Okay. Any other comments before we go? Okay. Okay. You're up. 10 minutes.
Do you want me to do it?
It won't be 10 minutes. More like 5, I think.
Okay.
My name is Ellen Nutter, and I am a city planner, and I have a concentration in historic preservation. I'm retired, though. And I'm here with our committee, and we call ourselves the Montford Neighborhood Working Committee on Montford Historic Standards. The members include Susan Egerton. We're all residents of Montford. Susan is a current member of the Montford Neighborhood Board. Mark Voorhees, who composed and analyzed the survey that we did, and Allison Like, who is also a resident, and we're all homeowners in the district. We thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to talk to you today. And I apologize for reading these remarks. We prefer to simply talk to you, but we wanted to make sure that we gave you plenty of time to ask us questions. And we're leaving you with a handout, which is, do you want to? Which is these remarks plus a summary, which is colored, of our thoughts about how this could be revised.
And that is what, I think we have a copy of that?
You have something like it. This is a little different. We tried to get it on 2 pages.
Okay.
Yeah. We tried to summarize it even more. We are requesting that the HRC form a subcommittee to consider these 4 specific amendments to the current standards. We don't make these proposed changes lightly. They're based on considerable input and discussion within the Montford community. That involved a formal survey of the community through the Montford listserv, discussions at the Montford Neighborhood Association meetings, several of them, and discussions with staff of HRC and with numerous residents. We received well over 200 written comments and suggestions through the survey, plus many others outside the survey. The 4 changes we're proposing had by far the highest level of community interest and support at about 80% of those responding. On behalf of the community, the working committee analyzed survey feedback and formalized this request. As is stated in the current Montford guidelines, the standards are not considered static and are intended to adapt as conditions change. We believe we have a pretty good sense of the community's wishes. We think they would like to maintain a balance between preservation of what we consider our wonderful neighborhood and its history, while continuing to adapt to the changing reality in which we live. We know that staff has shared with you the materials that we've provided. In no particular order, I would like to just summarize the proposed changes. Number one, allowing front yard fences. This is driven primarily by concern over the safety of our children and pets in an environment of increased traffic in terms of both volume and speed. We can't trust traffic calming measures. Unfortunately, only a fence can be relied on to stop a child or a pet from chasing a ball into the street and into an oncoming car. And I live on Chestnut Street, and I can tell you that the traffic there is quite heavy. And Mark and Allison live on Montford, so we have quite a bit of experience with this. Change number 2, additions. We agree with the current guideline that additions are preferable on the rear of a structure. That is not always possible, however, either because historic features cannot be removed from the rear, or where the lot lacks sufficient space in the rear for an addition. We propose that the standards be made explicit that side additions, or those that wrap around from the rear to the side, can be permitted as long as all other provisions of the guidelines are followed. We note that on corner lots, side or wraparound additions will generally be less visible than rear additions. This proposal is driven by the need to make our homes more livable and sustainable in a time when people are living longer. At the end of the 20th century, when historic Montford houses were built, bedrooms were on the second floor. Since 1920, life expectancy has increased by 25 years. Allowing first floor additions provides flexibility for first floor bedrooms to accommodate both the disabled and allows residents to age gracefully in place rather than being forced to relocate. Changes number 3 and 4 are solar panels and replacement windows and doors. These proposals are driven by the need to do everything within our control to fight climate change and help Buncombe County achieve its environmental goals. We are facing a climate crisis, which I think is existential, and we don't feel that HRC should be put in the position of having to limit what residents can do to address this crisis. We wish this were not the reality, but unfortunately it is. The solar proposal would permit location of solar energy collectors where optimal for energy generation. Every effort would be made to limit impact on historic character-defining features. The window and door proposal would permit replacement of non-character defining windows or doors with Environmental Protection Agency certified Energy Star products. All replacements would be required to be wood and to match the existing style. All of these proposed changes would remain in the category of major works in our thinking. We do not believe that any of them are breaking new ground. There are examples of where each of the proposed changes have already been implemented in the Montford Historic District. There are also examples of where they have not. The current wording drives inconsistency in applications, extra work for HRC and staff, and frustration in the community. Many of the guidelines read as merely suggestions rather than definitive standards. One example is where the guidelines say that front yard fences are strongly discouraged. That's a quote. We're not sure what that means. One person has an approved HRC front yard fence, but his neighbor was not allowed to have a front yard fence. There's equally vague language in all 4 of the areas where changes are proposed. There is some interest, and you just discussed this, in the community in rewriting the entire set of standards. That would be a huge task, both in time and effort. That is why we have focused on these 4 high-interest areas. Our hope is that the subcommittee would address these 4 specific changes and in the process establish a clearer procedure for how future changes can be made in the most efficient manner possible for the HRC, for staff, and for residents. Hopefully, the combination of our remarks today and the information that was shared prior to the meeting is sufficient to convince you that these proposals merit study by the Commission. We would be delighted to participate in such an effort. The attached document, which is the colored one, provides more detail on the rationale for the proposed changes and suggests specific wording for each. We would be happy to discuss these further and to answer any questions you may have. And our addresses and names are added to this.
Thank you.
So,
Are there any questions? I think not at this juncture.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's three minutes. Bill, you're up.
I'm Bill Eakins, a resident of Montford. I served 7.5 years on HRC, 7 as an officer of the commission. The day after I was term limited off, I started serving on the board of the Preservation Society of Asheville and Buncombe County. I am on the Montford Neighborhood Association Board, where I chair our committee on the HRC and the Montford Historic District Standards. The M&A Board was aware of the efforts of the group presenting to you tonight. It chose to take no position. I appreciate that the 4 members of the group have kept me informed and that they have worked very hard in good faith. The changes they propose are not what I would propose. I won't speak about them specifically. I will instead ask you to consider the broader issue of standard revisions. As a commissioner on HRC who had served on another such body, I thought the language of certain standards could be clearer, definitions were sometimes lacking, and the usual page of explanatory material on certain standards often confused what it was meant to clarify. When our standards were written, SHPO advised to leave room for flexibility, to use relative rather than absolute terms, and language such as encourage, recommend, and discourage. Now, after years of experience, 14 years since the Montford standards were enacted, deciding applications under this language, the Commission could better define and clarify these provisions, making their language closer to actual Commission practice. In practice, some discouragements and recommendations are more absolute than the language implies. As applied, discouraged may mean prohibited with exceptions or prohibited period. As to missing definitions, did anyone following the hearings about the hotel in Biltmore Village think that a revision providing a better height definition would be a good idea? Presumably everybody in this hearing room. I understand that the HRC is underfunded and understaffed, that undertaking a complete revision of the standards of any historic district is not realistic in the foreseeable future. But I would hope that a subcommittee could address revisions that may have occurred to present and former commissioners, staff, and residents. I would ask tonight that a subcommittee of commissioners and residents be formed to consider such changes in Montford and other districts. This does not need to be a huge commitment of time and resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben? Okay.
Amanda was before Bill even. Is she not on your list?
No. She's,
Amanda.
oh, Amanda, yeah, sorry. Sorry, Amanda. You're the pocket person.
Oh, it's fine. We're good.
She's going to see if we can follow now. This is it.
Okay. Hello, I'm Amanda Moore. I'm the Director of Historic Preservation at the Preservation Society of Asheville and Buncombe County. And I've read many of the design standards, and I do think they need to be updated, but the proposed changes that are made tonight aren't the changes that need to be made. I think they should be comprehensively reviewed to see what needs to be updated to make current practices and the needs of the neighborhood. And also reformatted so that the standards that the neighborhoods are required to follow are actually clear and very easy for those that are not architects or planners. We at the Preservation Society would be happy to be a part of that process. We are concerned that the proposed changes to the design standards would negatively affect the historic integrity of the Montfort neighborhood, especially the proposed changes to the windows and doors section and the additions section. Some of the proposed changes do not follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. These standards provide great recommendations on how you can make changes to buildings without negatively impacting the historic character. These guidelines that are used by preservation professionals across the country should be referenced, and they are currently in the standards. So when they are updated, to make sure that those updates do still meet those standards. We're also concerned that the proposed updates do not strike a balance between sustainability and preservation of the historic properties in the neighborhood. And they favor sustainability over preservation. We at the Preservation Society agree that sustainability is important and they should be taken into consideration when the standards are updated. But there needs to be a better balance between protecting the historic integrity so it's not lost when sustainable changes are made to make properties more sustainable. As Alex said, the National Park Service does have great standards for sustainability called the Illustrated Guidelines for Sustainability for Rehabbing Historic Buildings, and these could be also consulted when updating the standards. We do appreciate all the work that was done by the neighborhood to involve the residents, but we don't feel like there was enough involvement to make sure that all the needs of the neighborhood were met. We hope that when and if the design standards are updated, there's more neighborhood involvement, there's more multiple public meetings, listening sessions, and surveys so that the whole neighborhood can really be a part of the process. So their wants and needs are included, and they can respond to any drafts and proposals to the changes. This will allow the updated standards to meet all the needs of the neighborhood, and there is truly that balance, as they say in these standards, a balance between the wants of the neighborhood and historic preservation. So we hope you don't consider these changes and maybe think about doing a more comprehensive update. Thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay, now it's Ben's turn.
Good evening. My name is Ben Scales. I'm past president and treasurer of the Preservation Society, and I echo and reiterate the positions expressed on its behalf today. I have been a resident and a homeowner in the Montfort neighborhood for 22 years, and this is the first I've heard of the proposal to have a subcommittee, so I thought we were actually discussing the proposed changes, but that's where my comments are going to be directed at. While I have issues with some, if not all, of the proposed changes, in the interest of time, I'll focus my remarks on the windows and doors portion. It's been said that these architectural marvels are not mere openings, they're gateways to another time. The proponents are very clear, quote, the rationale for the change is environmental. I would submit, however, that the environmental considerations are outside of the scope of the powers and duties of this commission. Specifically, the legislature has expressly directed local governments to safeguard the heritage of the city by preserving important elements of its architectural history. The proposed changes would require the commission to defer to the applicants deeming any window and door as energy efficient without any objective standard for what is energy efficient. Thus, this change would eliminate any protection for any historic window or door that any homeowner wanted to replace. I do not believe this commission is empowered or positioned to make these environmental determinations, but rather that adopting this change would violate the legislative mandate of this commission to safeguard Montfort's historic resources. But setting that aside, even if the commission were to take on the role of environmental arbiter, the proponents' arguments fall flat. They cherry-pick statements from one EPA website in an attempt to guilt trip this commission into believing that replacing historic windows and doors is more environmentally friendly than preserving them. In reality, preserving historic windows is actually the greener choice when the entire life cycle of the window is considered and the embodied energy is calculated. The embodied energy, which the proponents ignore completely, is the energy that has already been expended in creating and installing the original window. That embodied energy ends up in the landfill along with the original window when it gets replaced. Replacement windows themselves have a very short useful life, ranging from 2 years, as listed in their warranties, to 20 years at the outside. Compare that to the windows they want to replace, many of which are 100 years old. Studies by the National Trust have concluded that existing window retrofit strategies can match the energy performance of Energy Star replacement windows at a fraction of the cost, and without the loss of the original window's embodied energy or the historically significant features. Window replacement is not the best way to improve the efficiency of historic windows.
That's not 3 minutes. You have a 3-minute.
Oh, okay. If I can wrap up briefly. Historic preservation is an important way for us to transmit our understanding of the past to future generations and to give them the opportunity to experience and marvel at what has been created at the turn of the century. I urge you to not adopt these proposed changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Logan?
Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Logan, historic windows specialist. I've been restoring windows in Asheville for over 12 years now. And I just wanted to I found a big part about my job is educating people on what's possible with old windows. So old windows can be retrofitted with modern weather stripping and a storm window, and there are numerous studies, as Alex also mentioned, that prove that they can reach the same energy efficiency as new replacement windows. I think this satisfies the environmental need for better energy efficiency while also upholding the historical significance of these homes in the neighborhood. Original windows have lasted over 100 years, usually with very little maintenance. We've restored windows that are 200 years old. Replacement windows, as Ben just mentioned, are designed to last 15 to 30 years before needing to be replaced again, putting us in a cycle of planned obsolescence, which is kind of like our cell phones. They're designed just to be thrown in the trash, filling up our landfills with a bunch of trash. So ROI or carbon footprint reduction is never achieved before the windows actually must have to be replaced again, filling up our landfills with trash. So something I think that this massive amount of waste is really never considered in the production of the energy used in the production of these windows is also never considered, and that gets overlooked in the debate of carbon footprint. So yeah, I can't say I support changing that. That's really all I have.
Thank you. So Darcy and Brad, looks like you're part of the team, so you're not, are they here?
They were the homeowners for one of the.
Oh, okay, they just signed up incorrectly. Okay, got it. Sarah? Sarah here?
We've lived in Montfort for a few years.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Sarah Rosenfield, and I live in Montfort on Montfort Ave. The thing I wanted to talk about are fences for the need for them for a different reason or an additional reason. And that is for safety reasons, not just for kids, but for everybody in families. And, you know, I read the Montfort newsletters and the different Montfort newsletters about safety issues and how people are coming, trying to break in cars, you know, walking on people's front yards or trying doorknobs and stuff. And we had somebody who basically stalked us for nearly a year and it was terrifying. And so I read a whole lot of stuff and, about safety and what you can do, what individuals can do to be safe. And one of the big things they talk about are fences. So, I mean, I'm begging you for safety. I've gotten to the point where I've really thought about moving, because you can't live in a place where, you don't feel like you're protected and safe. And there are things that you can do, but this is one of the major things. So I beg you, for that reason, it involves everybody, adults, children, to please allow people to do this for their own feeling of comfort and safety in this neighborhood. And the other thing I want to say is the survey that was done of the community about these different issues, and a bunch of other ones too, but these were said for the, for the ones that the people really thought were the most important. And the survey sample, I'm a professional survey sample. I've been at university and doing research for like 35 years. So I know what it means, what the samples mean, and how they're collected, and what the evidence is from those samples. And I can tell you that this is a really good sample. It's the best evidence you can have in support of these changes. So I ask you, please to have these changes considered and hopefully changed. Thank you.
Thank you. James?
Hi, I'm Jim Jasper. I live on Montfort Ave, 333 Montfort Ave. Excuse my coughing. I've been in bed with bronchitis for the last week, but I wanted to come today to assure you that there is very wide support in Montfort for the work of this committee and for the changes in the guidelines. We all want them to be a little more flexible and a little less rigid than they've been sometimes. So this is not just a handful of people who want fences, who want new windows. However, since I'm here, I spent a couple of hours with Michael this afternoon talking about replacing or repairing our old windows, and I'm about to spend a lot of money getting him to do this. There's one issue, though, that is not about the environment. It's about noise. Michael's best efforts will calm the noise from Montfort Avenue some, but it will not have the effect that a double pane or triple pane new window would have. And I assure you, most nights, I'm awakened at some point during the night by some loud vehicle going up or down Montfort Avenue. The traffic is out of control. People get recorded as going 80 miles an hour in the middle of the night along Montfort Avenue. It is noisy. And I would love to have double pane, double glazed, triple glazed windows, at least in our bedroom, so that I'm literally awakened, I would not be literally awakened during the night. So this is another issue about replacement of windows and so on that I think, you should consider. We have windows that don't even face the street. Nobody outside of our own yard could see, and I think, would not be allowed to replace even those. So I think some flexibility in the guidelines would be really very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the end of our list. So I guess it's time for some discussion. Commissioners? So I'll start. I appreciate all of you coming and sharing your feelings. It sounds like I heard support for putting a commission together, which I am open to doing as long as it fits, within, I know our staff, we have a lot going on, and all of us are volunteers. I ask for your patience while we consider these things and try to figure out what our next steps are. But our job is to try to protect and preserve your neighborhoods under the guidelines, which I can understand some can be confusing, and I am very much support getting that ironed out. It may be one at a time, and it may take time just because of our schedules and what we have available. And with that, I'm open to any commissioners' comments, questions.
I guess, I don't know what we're going to decide, like whether we're voting on any of these or tabling for other meetings and stuff, but I mean, just I think whenever you're buying a home in these historic districts, you're made aware of these stipulations that you'll have to have with buying a historical home, and, you know, yeah, I mean, they're saying some people, I guess, they're giving a little bit of thought about it. And at the end of the day, like, as much as sustainability and having an energy efficient home is important in new homes, I think especially in thinking about that moving forward, we also have to think about the preservation of historical homes and how that keeps the character of Asheville, especially being a very artistic community. And so, I mean, some of these I think I would be fine like having the conversation if we want to have a separate committee or vote on it, just our committee itself, but there's some that I think don't really warrant that much of a discussion because it's infringing too much on the historical preservation.
I agree with what the other commissioners have said so far. I think as a person who grew up around Asheville, went to college at UNC Asheville, I think that our most important goal here is preservation. I agree that sustainability is extremely important, but this issue is going to take time. And I agree with forming a subcommittee. I could even be on said subcommittee. I volunteer for that because I think this is an extremely important issue, and I can understand the residents wanting clarification of the language. I think that's extremely important. But preservation is definitely the most important thing. I mean, as a realtor, I can understand people wanting to age in place in their homes and wanting to do these additions and wrap around things, but changing the historic architecture of a home for that purpose, I mean, you have to put the historic character of the home even above the person. We're just like a steward of these buildings, a temporary owner of these historic buildings. We're not, the homes will outlast you. They were there before you, most likely, and will outlast you. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
I agree with staff and other commissioners that have looked to support the subcommittee, and I hope that the groups can kind of come together a little smoother so that the process is easier for everyone in the neighborhood to absorb and process how these substantial changes are going to affect the standards for the neighborhood and how the processes that staff deals with through the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service standards for rehabilitation are understood clearly from everyone in the neighborhood on how that can move forward. So I'm a long way of saying supporting the subcommittee process as defined by city's ability to handle that, by city staff's ability, which I'm not clear how that.
Well, I think the easiest thing to do would be to work with the executive committee, since it's already an existing subcommittee, and if you read the rules of procedure, it more or less falls under the jurisdiction of the executive committee, and that would also, we already have a regular meeting time, as far as having to orchestrate a whole other subcommittee.
It's already moving along a lot faster than I thought.
That's great.
One thing I want to say, though, is I think to go back to Commissioner Gorman's thoughts, it would be helpful to hear, if there are things that you are saying that you don't think that the executive committee should take up? I'm assuming that you mean you didn't specify which buckets of things, so I'll let you do that yourself, but if you have feedback for that, on that, I think that would be helpful, just so that the group proposing the changes isn't like surprised if there are concerns related back to the specific, like whether it's windows or solar panels or whatever. And then the other thing, real quick before we get to that, Commissioner McDonald asked if we would read her statement into the record. So Chair Olive, I don't know if you would prefer me to do that, or she said even if just the last 3 paragraphs got read into the record, that would be fine if you didn't want to read the whole.
Okay.
Read it in its entirety. So.
Okay, here we go. This is from Commissioner McDonald, Annie McDonald, who's not here today. Timing. You have timing? Okay. This means in part, no. I'm going to start with the paragraph above. I am concerned about the proposed amendments, not necessarily the content of what is proposed, but rather the process by which the suggested changes are being presented. Design standards are part of the community compact about the collective goals for preservation. Substantive changes to any design standards are most appropriately done in public view and through large and small meetings with affected property owners, commission members, staff, and others. Such meetings must be facilitated by an unbiased party to guide the discussion in a way that gives space to all voices and opinions. Ultimately, the design standards are the community standards, not the HRC's or even staff's. This means, in part, that the standards should not be substantively amended to address individual needs as they arise. Instead, the community and the HRC should work together to develop a plan for reviewing and amending the standards on a period basis. But such a plan should be implemented within the public realm. Reviewing and amending standards on a 5 or 10-year schedule is generally advisable, not just for good design review, housekeeping, but also to serve as a good tool for community outreach and education. I understand the petitioner's concerns about the Montford design standards. The points they raise are valid. The document contains many statements that are self-contradictory or at least appear to be conflicting. Other statements in the Montford design standards employ vague language such as should be and are discouraged that are ill-suited for such a document. The challenge of interpreting some of the language in the standards and the appropriateness of referring to HRC precedent when the written record is not easily accessible for many applicants has often been a challenge for me as an HRC member, even with my professional experience. I support the petitioner's desire to review and amend the Montford design standards. Rather than adopt outright what has been proposed, I believe that the HRC should consider planning for a public engagement process that allows for an open dialogue among all parties. So, do we need to put a motion forward at this point, or how do we?
Well, what I was suggesting before is I think it would be helpful to hear like specifics in terms of like, is the commission saying they are okay with the executive committee considering all of these proposed changes, even though we've discussed them in the executive committee meeting already? Or are there commissioners who are here today that are in the executive committee who are saying our feedback is X, like consider the proposed changes to X section, but maybe not this section? I think that's what I think would be helpful. Like I said, so that we're not just, unless you disagree, it's really up to you.
No, I don't disagree. I'd like to hear from the other commissioners. Celestia, you told us what exactly?
I think mostly like the solar panels are kind of a big one. Like, I understand that, maybe having them where they aren't able to be viewed from like the road and stuff is not necessarily the best use of them, but putting them, I think, on the front roof line or just wherever they're most energy efficient isn't really preserving the historical look of your home. And then again, like back to the windows and doors, I hadn't thought about the noise, and I can feel for you on that, especially, and I don't necessarily have an opinion on, you know, windows that aren't going to be seen at all from any public area, but I think having single pane historical windows just be kind of restored for more energy efficiency is kind of a big deal in keeping the historical preservation of a home. I think those are really the big ones that I had. I mean, the fences, I don't have a say hugely in, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and I guess, yes, if we want to keep it in the executive committee, that's fine with me. I don't want extra resources to have to be taken away from staff or the city. But.
Yeah, if we're picking things off in that way, I'm in agreement that solar and windows are, windows especially have such a strong connection to the standards and guidelines from the state, national, and similar cities. And I think fences need clarification because it's confusing for all of us on your fences, and I think there could be some firming that and see how additions work out. I don't think we've had side addition in a long time.
It's been a long time since one has been put forth.
What is a long time?
6 or 7 years probably.
That's what I was wondering. Okay. That's all I had to say.
And I just want to offer too that, like, I think, you know, we could figure out what next steps look like, but certainly that would be, you know, parlaying with the community in terms of whatever questions or drafting of standards we come up with, and we could obviously help with the community engagement, which is what we suggested on the front end of this would be the best process. And if we needed to do another survey, then we draft the survey questions that are, you know, tied specifically to the proposed amendments that you all feel comfortable supporting.
And would that be mailed, if there was a survey, would that be mailed to each address?
We can figure that out with our communications department. Typically, we do online surveys, but that doesn't mean that's the only way we could make it available, probably. I think we did a door-to-door survey for Walton Street.
So would part of that be, I know that we have these 4 proposed amendments, but would it be good for the community to be able to put their input in and have a list of priorities, what the whole community would like to see before we move? Or do we start with I mean, I'm open, I just wonder what the best way forward is.
Like I said before, I agree that with Commissioner Gorman's earlier statement, that I don't think that these 4 buckets of things warrant us going and saying, we're going to rewrite the entire standards.
Right.
We don't have the resources to do that right now. And so what I think we need to do is take these proposed amendments.
Okay.
Study what the executive committee, you know, and the other commissioners who are present here today suggest they're willing to support changes to, and then working with the executive committee to study those and come up with suggestions, and then work with the neighborhood association and this group to do outreach to the community on any drafted amendments. And then that way, once it comes to the commission for a vote, everybody's brought along on the journey together versus, you know, you guys just coming back and saying, okay, we're gonna take a vote on this, you know, in 3 months or whatever. I think, because that's how we, like Commissioner McDonald said in her letter, that's what we suggested on the front end. Like, we don't do substantive changes to design standards without input from the community. So I think that we would certainly want to do that.
Okay, so next step would be the executive committee will take it up and discuss it, and then we communicate with the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think we'll make a plan as far
Okay.
as working with the MNA and the folks that are proposing the amendments to.
With the specific changes that we want to
Yeah.
focus on.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like a plan. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you guys for coming and for all the work you did.
Yeah, thank
And there's more work coming.
We didn't have anything else on our agenda unless there's
Okay.
anything that the commission wants to talk about.
Yeah, I guess like, should we just email you if we have comments?
Yeah, you can send comments to me via email. Since it's not positive initial, it's okay.
Okay.
Communicate. As long as it's not an email to everyone, just remember that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, we've got nominating committee, Xander's here, but Maria's not, so we can take care of voting for the executive committee at the next meeting.
Okay.
Xander and Maria were both comfortable just renominating the existing slate of officers. And Griffin Awards.
Yeah.
The HRC award will be given at the Griffin Awards in May, so I'll need to get someone to volunteer to be the award presenter for that, so just, I'll send out an email.
You guys can go. Are we ready? Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I forgot to ask for everybody. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Okay, adjourn.